Thank you again for coming.
All right. And we will also be having a Spanish breakout room for anybody that is interested in listening and being involved in this in Spanish. So Rosina, if you could please introduce that.
Buenas noches. Les queremos nada más anunciar que la reunión también se va a dar en español en una sala por separado. La reunión va a ser exactamente igual a la presentación que se va a dar en inglés. Si desean escuchar la presentación en español, una vez que aparezca la invitación para que se unan a la sala, pueden oprimir el botón y unirse a la sala. Les daremos la presentación, como mencioné, toda en español. Gracias.
All right. So we will give it a minute for anybody that wants to join the Spanish breakout room, and then we will continue with the presentation.
Vamos a esperar un par de minutos para que se puedan unir a la sala los que quieran escucharla en español. Yo me voy a la sala y ahí los espero. Gracias.
All right. So today's agenda, we'll start by providing a brief overview of the housing element and what goes into the housing element update process. We'll then jump a little bit deeper into the regional housing needs allocation and how housing needs are determined at the state level and then at the regional and city levels. We'll focus a little bit on Hollister demographics, as that is a big component of how we determine housing needs in the city and what shapes the recommendations and policies moving forward. And of course, we will focus on a participant activity to get input from everybody here today to kind of guide the preparation of the housing element moving forward. Next slide. All right.
So the first topic that we're going to discuss tonight is just an overview on what is a housing element. And so a housing element is a required chapter of the city's general plan, and it identifies projected housing needs by income category. It provides goals, policies, programs, and objectives to address current needs and guide future housing growth for all income levels. And so why are housing elements updated? Housing elements are updated every 8 years to address the changing housing needs of the community and updates in state laws. The housing element establishes a plan and demonstrates the city's ability to meet current and future housing growth needs for all income levels. It also gives the community an opportunity to engage and give feedback. And so the housing element is the only chapter of the general plan that requires certification by the California State Department of Housing and Community Development, otherwise known as HCD, to ensure compliance with the many state laws. Certification allows the city to become eligible for a number of grants and funding sources, and also protects the city from any penalties associated with non-compliance. So the key features listed on the screen are required components of the housing element. The document will start with the population and housing profile, aka the housing needs assessment, which identifies potential housing needs in the community. The housing element also includes an evaluation of possible constraints and resources for housing development. The newest requirement is the affirmatively furthering fair housing, AFFH, analysis, which looks at fair housing practices and fair housing laws. The housing element must also identify sites that can accommodate the city's RHNA, which we will discuss in the next slide. And lastly, the housing element reviews existing policies and programs and establishes new ones to meet the city's housing needs and remain compliant with state laws. And so, as mentioned in the last slide, we're going to talk about the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, otherwise known as RHNA. And so the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, RHNA, is a statewide determination of housing need by region. It quantifies this need by income category for each jurisdiction throughout California and is based on future growth in population, employment, and households. So To determine RHNA, HTD first determines and distributes the state's housing needs to all the regional councils of governments. For Hollister, that is the San Benito Council of Governments, known as SBCOG. SBCOG then develops a methodology to determine the fair share distribution of those units to each jurisdiction. Hollister's RHNA for the 2023 to 2031 housing element cycle is 4,163 units. And so as you can see on your screen, this table shows the RHNA distributed by income category and the income ranges for each category. The city must show how it plans to provide for the RHNA units at costs affordable to each income category. For example, the city must show it can provide 846 total units for households that earn an extremely low or very low income, 678 units for low income households, 826 units for moderate income units, and 1,813 units for above moderate income households, totaling in 4,163 units for the city's RHNA. And so this 6th cycle housing element differs greatly than the last 5th cycle update in terms of requirements and RHNA. As you can see on this table, the city's RHNA for all income levels has greatly increased since the last update.
All right, thank you, Jackie. So now that we have a general understanding of the housing element update itself, I will be diving a little bit into the city of Hollister's demographics. Next slide. All right, so as you can see here on the screen, the Hollister population is projected to increase through 2040. The city is largely made up of youth ages 5 to 19, followed by a large percentage of adults 20 to 34 and 35 to 49. So this indicates a need for typically more affordable units for a population that may not be able to right away afford a single family home. Persons over the age of 64 represent over 9% of the population. So this signals a need for senior housing or programs geared towards assisting seniors in the community. Next, we have a pie chart that shows a breakdown in the city by race and ethnicity. The city is largely made up of persons who identify as white, and the second largest racial group is Asian at 2.3%. However, when considering all races, the Hispanic and Latino population makes up approximately 72% of the city's population. And the data that we are showing here today, just to note, is based off of the latest 2022 available American Community Survey census data. Next slide. Here we have some statistics regarding housing in the city. So historically, there was a boom in housing development in the 90s. Typically, we assume that units over 30 years old may be in need of some rehabilitation or upgrades. This doesn't include historic homes that are typically well maintained. As we can see in recent years, housing production has slowed due to a combination of land availability and the cost of development. The pie chart on the right displays a breakdown of household types in the city, and we can see that Hollister is largely made up of married couple households at 57%, followed by non-family households, which includes unmarried persons living together, roommates, or persons living alone at 19%. The next slide provides a bit of insight on housing prices and tenure in the city. So we see that the city of Hollister has a median home value of $526,900, which is compared to San Benito County's median home value at $588,500. So those figures are relatively comparable, but San Benito County overall has a generally higher median home value. And then looking at the city's household tenure, it's largely owner occupied at 62%, with 38% being renter occupied. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of RHNA and the demographics of the city. A large part of today's meeting is really to get input from the community to guide the development of the housing element update. So the next part of the meeting will be a participant activity to get input on what types of development we want to see in the city, where we want the development to go, and any other feedback that folks may have on that. So if everybody could, on their phone or computer, please go to menti.com, and then you should be prompted to insert the code shown on the right of your screen. You will be able to participate live in our activity. And we will also have a time for question and answers at the end of this presentation. So if there's anyone that has questions on the information that was just discussed, we will follow up on that a little bit later in today's meeting. All right, looks like folks are able to join. We'll give it a few more moments. All right, we can go ahead and jump to the next slide. The instructions will still be at the top of the screen in case anybody joins later on or gets kicked out of the Menti for any reason. All right, so the first question, what words come to mind when you think of housing in Hollister? And this can be related to existing development in the city or existing communities, and pretty high level, just a broad overview of what comes to mind. And as we get responses, they will pop up on the screen and form a bit of a word cloud for everybody to see. All right. So we can see, and people can still keep inputting as we kind of dig a little bit deeper into these trends that we're seeing, but looks like some of the themes are single family, not affordable. And then we also see that there's some feedback on the community. It seems like there is a strong community here, and there's some focus on historic as well. So if anybody would like to go off of mute and maybe elaborate on any of their responses here, that would be great.
Good evening. I'm Devin Pack. I am a former planning commissioner for San Benito County. And in regards to some aspects of the housing element, I've been studying that extensively while working on my master's in urban planning at San Jose State. First of all, Hollister is overwhelmingly single-family residents. According to the American Community Surveys of 2022. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, right now we have houses that are on the market. A median home price is at $710,000. Overall, the history of our reaching the RENA has been successful on the above market rates, but it has been falling down completely on very low income rates in production in particular. Also, yeah, I'll circle back with some other comments, but one thing that I would like to very much illustrate or emphasize is that Hollister is lacking in transitional housing, which is to say that our homelessness problem is aggravated by the shortage of short-term rental housing for persons who experience, say an abusive or toxic household. And so that is one thing that is presently aggravating the homelessness problem in San Benito County.
All right, thank you for sharing, Devin. Is there anybody else that would like to elaborate on any of the responses here? And as a follow-up, in case anybody's not able to go off mute and share here, we also have a follow-up to this, which is a virtual community survey where people will be allowed to provide their input. All right, next slide. All right, the next question is, what are some housing challenges in Hollister? I know we touched on this briefly in the previous question, but more targeted, what would we say are some challenges in the city? Yeah, I see, Julio, you have a hand up.
Sorry, I made it a little late. I think some of the challenges, what I'm kind of seeing with the current city of Hollister general plan is it almost seems like we need to prioritize more mixed use and higher density, because I still see a lot of single family homes in zoning in the county and the city. So I think just promoting, I don't know how, like I said, how we would do that, but just promoting more higher density housing. And yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Julio. Yeah, we can see here a lot of the same trends. Parking seems to be a priority or a concern, I should say, one of the challenges in the city, and then varied pricing ranges as well as development types. And again, for anybody that may have joined a little bit later, all the feedback that we get here will be used to help develop our policies and strategies that are included in the housing element. Transportation seems to also be a trend. Yep, Devin, I see a hand up.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention that, another aspect of the problem is, as I said, sort of a lack of starter homes, lack of diversity of housing. Some of the problems are, for example, right now, the aggregate impact fees, for a housing development in Hollister are 3 times what they are in Gilroy and twice as much as what they are in San Jose. And so we have an impact fee schedule that is very inhibitive, along with the high production costs of housing production. And also, one thing that I would like to mention is that, the current schema of having impact fees for the ADU units being comparable to the levels for building an entire home further discourage the production of ADUs, when we need to be diversifying in terms of the total range of housing. There's, a problem that a lot of the housing is above market rate, sort of homogenous McMansions that are, generally being marketed in the 8s and 9s. And essentially what is more difficult is homes for kind of younger families or families that are hoping to kind of buy their first home. So that's an issue, is the lack of diversity in the types of housing that are available.
All right, thank you, Devin. Cynthia, if you'd like to go next. Okay, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Reporting in progress popped up.
No, we can hear you.
Very good. I get a lot of comments. I'm a lender, a local lender. I've worked on the KB project, the DeNova, the Kuiper. People are coming here because they do want single family. They don't care about the 4,000 square.
Cynthia, we we are having a bit of trouble hearing you. There's some audio issues.
You know what? I live in the canyon, so I have terrible reception. That's okay. I'll make comments and chat.
Okay, thank you. Yep. And for anyone that may not be in the Menti right now, the information to join, is at the top of the screen. So you can join at any point in this presentation. We can move on to the next question. All right, so this kind of ties into some of the things we've been chatting about in the previous questions, but here we have a few things, a few selections, a few different housing types for everybody to choose from. So based on these, what types of housing does Hollister need? And you can select more than one. And if there's maybe a housing type that isn't listed here, again, there's a community survey following this where you would be able to provide additional input and context for any of those. All right. Yep, we can see here everything seemed to be going up proportionally for the past few responses. So we can see transitional and supportive housing as well as affordable units as a key point of interest and for housing development, housing type in the city. And then next we have multifamily housing, duplex and triplex, as well as senior housing. So if anybody would like to go off mute and maybe elaborate a bit further, I know we've touched on this in the previous responses as well, but I'll open it up for any comments here. I just heard someone.
Yeah.
Yep, Devin,
Okay.
please go
I
ahead.
just wanted to comment also, one thing that we're needing, with the houses, the above market rate houses that are being produced, what we're lacking in is housing for, vital aspects of the workforce. And by that, I mean nurses, health workers, police officers, firefighters, teachers. Basically, we need to be looking at developing more units that are affordable, because basically Hollister is unattractive and uncompetitive with the salaries of Monterey County and Santa Clara County. And so we will continue to be having staff shortages both in healthcare, education, and law enforcement if we do not if we do not work to develop more incentives to attract people to Hollister. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Devin. All right, any further comments before we move on?
This is only specifically to types of housing or not zoning, because kind of just to really reiterate, just kind of I am not seeing any kind of zoning. I'm just kind of curious on that, because I know the housing element's a little different, but I know multifamilies typically it just seems kind of abstract. If you could kind of build on that.
Yeah, so as part of the housing element, we do a candidate housing sites analysis, which basically determines sites within the city that would be suitable for development. And we have to identify adequate sites to develop the units that are proposed. So based on that, the housing element will include programs and policies and also be consistent with the general plan update that is currently happening to have any necessary zoning or land use changes to facilitate the development of housing on those sites.
Oh, got it. So it's a little more abstract than say a general plan. It's based off of the RENA numbers, correct? Okay.
Correct. Yep. It's based off of RENA numbers, and then the actual candidate housing sites is determined based off of the underlying zoning, and then we identify strategies to facilitate future development through those programs that we recommend. All right, we can move on to the next question. So here, the question actually that will follow this is, we're looking for input, which ties into the candidate housing sites that were just discussed, but looking for input from the community on where in the city they would like to see future development. So we have a map here that identifies some landmarks in the city as well as some key roadways, just to get everybody's wheels spinning on potential development areas. So we have here City Hall, and then we also have Calaveras Elementary School, San Benito High School, Rancho San Justo Middle School, and Marguerite Middle School. In addition to that, we have a few parks, including Veterans Memorial Park, Whale Valley View Park, and Ridgemark Park. And then up here, we have the northern portion of the city, which includes the Hollister Airport. And then we also see on the bottom left, Calaveras Elementary School. So like I mentioned, this is just to get everybody's wheels spinning for the next question, which is which areas of housing do you recommend for future development? So the more specific the responses here, the better. Some examples would be in the downtown area, along Union Road. So this will help to develop our candidate sites moving forward. Maybe as we get some responses here, if anybody wants to come off of mute and maybe elaborate a little bit on why they would like to see development in these areas, that would be great. So I see downtown is a trend as well as Buena Vista. Elizabeth, I see your hand is up. In case you're trying to speak, I think you may still be on mute. Okay, I see some more infill areas near downtown, as well as along Highway 25, as well as Santa Ana Road. Yep, Devin, I see your hand up if you'd like to go off mute.
So a couple of comments. First, towards infill, in order to, prompt and accelerate infill, there may be some consideration of offering a density bonus or a kind of a small micro upzoning to some of the areas that have been long empty. That might be a way of filling in some of the vacant lots in the downtown area. Secondly, I would like to suggest that another place to consider for upzoning would be to connect the West Gateway area along Meridian to San Benito Street. So San Benito Street is already well developed. Then we have another kind of commercial Mercado center to the west. And so kind of, if we're looking for infill development, that's an area to go. I would also, recommend that, the area along Buena Vista Road and also heading along Highway 25, it's moving to areas of transit and, just sort of ensuring that it synergizes with existing pathways of transit. And the last area that, you know, I kind of mentioned and threw in is to help build up the second high school and the new Gavilan Community College campus area. And so that's towards the east, towards Ridgemark, you know, along, let me just remind myself here of Fairview Road, which is where the Gavilan, you know, campus is going to be going. So basically areas that comport with and, you know, synthesize with the educational infrastructure that is being developed.
Right. Thank you for that, Devin. Is there anybody else that would like to elaborate on any of these responses here?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly also suggest. I know we talked about parking as being a big concern. I actually think decoupling parking. A lot of municipalities are actually decoupling parking as a requirement. So a lot of municipalities have a 1-for-1 parking. So maybe if it's an infill project, like as Devin was kind of saying, to focus on those infill is not be so, I guess, strict on the parking requirements, because parking is one of the driving factors of why construction costs are so much. So perhaps you know, maybe there are a lot of individuals who want to live downtown who don't have a car. So, you know, therefore, should they be penalized for paying for parking? And that's what a lot of municipalities are doing, decoupling parking. So in other words, it's an added on bonus or an added on feature, opposed to just a 1-for-1 per every unit.
Got it. Thank you for that. All right, we can move on to the next question. So this is kind of reflecting on existing character and neighborhoods in the city and things that we'd like to see maintained as we have future development in the city. So what do you value about Hollister's existing neighborhoods? And this can be about the character of the housing units themselves, about the community, about any resources and related to neighborhoods in the city. All right, some of the trends we're seeing is wide streets, walking trails, as well as a sense of community. Parks as well. Yeah, seems here that walking trails and the parks are a big value add to the city. If anyone would like to go off mute and elaborate on any of these.
Yeah. So, I mean, people appreciate that Hollister has a small town feel, you know, a countryside agrarian feel. And, you know, what I've generally heard is sort of the lamenting the lack of local amenities. So, of course, the parks, the sidewalks, the walking trails are wonderful. You know, the next thing is just ensuring that we have sort of third spaces, that is to say, you know, social venues and social avenues and amenities in our community.
All right, thank you, Devin. Anybody else that would like to provide input here? All right, we can move on. So that is the end of the participant activity. We have a couple more slides regarding the housing element update process, which we'll quickly walk through. So over on the screen now, we have a tentative project timeline. So we can see now that we are in spring 2023, we're having the first workshop. Following this over the summer, dates to be determined, we will be having Planning Commission and City Council study session, as well as a second workshop. Those will occur, those will coincide with the release of the public review draft of the housing element. And at workshop number 2, there will be an opportunity for anybody who has had a chance to review the housing element draft itself or has questions on the draft to provide input there. Following the conclusion of the public review period, we will have a revision process internally to make any necessary adjustments based on feedback that has been received on the housing element. We'll have a second Planning Commission and City Council study session. Following the conclusion of that, we'll make final revisions and submit the first draft of the housing element update to HCD. It will then go through review at the state level, and we will receive comments from them towards the end of the year. Following that, we'll be working closely with HCD in addition to city staff to make final revisions based on HCD comments to make sure that the housing element is ready for certification. The adoption hearings will occur in spring 2024. I think we have a bit of a typo there, but they will occur in spring or winter of 2024. And that is also at the same time as the housing element statutory deadline. So we will be working towards an end date that is a little bit less than a year from now, but this is just the tentative project timeline. And as there are new drafts available or any updates on the community workshops or future meetings, that will all be shared on the Housing Element Update webpage. And then next slide. So here, that was the end of the formal presentation for tonight's workshop. We will now open it up to any questions that folks may have or just a general discussion of anything related to the content that was discussed today. If there's anything that comes up following this meeting that you would like to share, you can contact Amber Cameron at the email and phone number listed on your screen. In addition to that, an opportunity to provide additional input that we would love to see from everybody is the Housing Element Update Community Survey. So that includes a number of questions that dive a little bit deeper beyond today's activity regarding housing in the city and what we'd like to see in the Housing Element Update. So everybody should be able to scan the QR code with their phones and view it on their devices. In addition to that, we have a QR code for a MailChimp for the Housing Element Update to receive emails on anything that goes out moving forward. And again, you should be able to scan that from your phone. In case those QR codes are not working for you, you can go ahead and send an email to the Housing Element email as well, and we can follow up with links to either of them for you to join. So with that, I'll open the floor for any further comments or questions that anyone may have.
Hi,
yep, I hear somebody is off
okay.
mute.
Yeah, I am not smart enough to put my hand up. Building off of Julio's comment earlier, I think it would be beneficial to integrate zoning and housing element discussions going forward to try to understand and coordinate expression of your opinions regarding those two, integrated as they are in execution. I think they have to be considered more or discussed simultaneously. So I would urge integration of the zoning components of the general plan itself and the housing element going forward.
Great, thank you. I see Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. My name's Elizabeth Martinez, and I am a school, Hollister School District trustee. And being that Hollister School District is probably one of the largest employer in this community, I also work for Hollister High School. And so, so I have a unique perspective on the education piece that I think as educators, we've been struggling quite a bit with the city as far as keeping up with the growth and not really understanding or having the opportunity to be included in the conversation on development and the impact that it has on our schools. And not being able to have, again, homes for our teachers that they can afford, for our classified, as well as just enough classrooms for all of the families coming in. And so that has been a very deep concern for, as you know, Hollister High School is in dire need of a second, we are in dire need of a second high school. And, you know, they tried going out for a bond a couple of years back and it was not approved by the voters. So I think it's a little frustrating for the infrastructure not being able to keep up with the growth, our streets, our sewer, you know, police, fire, all of those things are a big concern. And your education, your public services, if we're not keeping up with the amount of homes that the city is wanting to bring in, we're, you know, a bedroom community isn't going to sustain this community if we don't have the rest of the resources to provide the families that are coming to this town.
All right, thank you for that, Elizabeth. Devin, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. So recently I was taking a housing policy course at San Jose State. I'm currently working on my master's in urban planning program, degree there. And some of the comments, I have from, I did a term paper that was on a study of Hollister's housing element. A couple of policy ideas to look at is some of the things that are being implemented in Santa Clara and San Jose. And by that, I mean, Mayor Matt Mahan is discussing the idea in San Jose of a impact fee cap as a way to accelerate on, the current rate of production. Another thing that needs to be thought about is just in terms of procedurally with the planning department. I have received anecdotes to the effect that for something that is within code, single family housing, it's generally a 2-year period time to complete all of the permits for an application. But if there's pre-zoning or, annexation to be considered, then the time for planning a project increases to as much as 7 years. And of course, that just, with development and housing production, time is money. So obviously something, there should be a study of how to reduce bottlenecks in the, permitting process and the permit review process. Another thing that, I would recommend along the earlier subject of the impact fee cap is the idea of possibly creating what I call a market indexed impact fee cap. That is one where the ultimate cap of the impact fees is tied to the rate of housing production and to the most recent housing productions. In such a model, basically, when there is low production, as we are currently experiencing due to the high interest rates, the impact fee would go down, and that would in turn reduce the overall production costs and incentivize production. When there's high production costs, the impact fee could go up, and that would allow the city to reclaim more revenue if there's a very hot market. Along this subject, another thing kind of echoing what Julio suggested earlier, the city of San Jose is offering the waiver of parking requirements or reductions in parking requirements as another incentive hook for low-income housing and very low-income housing. And the VTA is looking into developing along transit hubs. Of course, Hollister presently doesn't have a lot in the way of mass transit, but something that we could definitely think about in terms of upzoning and siting is areas around the old train station or around mass transit options, with the idea that basically as it grows and as we're able to partner with the Santa Clara Valley VTA, Valley Transit Authority, we might be able to attract housing into those areas. So those are a couple of policy suggestions I would like to make, or topics for research as you work on developing this element.
Thank you, Devin, for your feedback. We will certainly take a look at the previous policies when we are developing the policy plan for the housing element. I want to read out some of the comments that have been going out in the chat. So one person says, I absolutely agree with needing more public services, resource schools, teachers, fire department, firefighters, police force, nurses, etc. Cynthia says, it's hard for the voters to pass something that is going to increase their property tax. If you could be a sales tax, or some additional tax, that would be something that may be approved. I agree, we need another high school. We need better roads. We need a lot in our county. Jennifer says, as a case manager for unhoused youth, we definitely lack of resources for them and can see that we need more affordable housing. And then, yes, Cynthia says, vote a sales tax. So thank you everyone for your comments. Janet, I see you have your hand up if you would like to unmute.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the impact fees. For our community right now, that's the only way that we can fund parks and schools. Our voters are really stretched in property taxes with bonds. And I don't see capping impact fees would be limiting how we're going to pay for other needs like sewers and parks and schools. So that's part of the problem that has happened in the past, is we have had developers come in and not pay their fair share. And whether or not it's somebody has to pay for these goods, that somebody has to pay for these services. We just can't just lay it on and say, well, it'll take care of itself. We in 2002 we had a building moratorium for almost 10 years because our sewage system would not keep up. So I think we have to be very careful with the impact fees. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Janet. I see Julio.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of build off of Devin's comments, and then also I think it's Jennifer Garcia's comments as the case manager one. For something like that, that's a great example for unhoused youth, having, because a lot of times the impact fees go to pay for roads, or go to pay for what is being impacted. So I think there really needs to be a closer look at the impact fees, because obviously, for housing unhoused youth, we should be, obviously as a city, we should not be so restrictive with our impact, or we shouldn't restrict development that is going to help people who are already living here. So, I mean, I don't want to sound prejudiced, But obviously, the reality is we shouldn't be housing the Bay Area. So those market rate units should actually be, those impact fees should actually be higher, opposed to obviously affordable housing. That's where we have to look at it. Okay, well, these units are going to be beneficial to the people who are already living in the community. So I think those impact fees should be reevaluated. And perhaps on market rates, when we do a CFD, for those who don't know, it's a community facilities district, really taking a closer look. Okay, let's do a community facilities district, but those who are moving here, I hate to say it, but yes, you're going to have to pay a higher share because so that's just kind of wanted to build off that. Oh, lastly, as Devin was saying, Hollister could also take advantage of a transit-oriented development. So that is definitely something that I think should be mentioned here in the housing element, because Hollister, the county COG actually did a study about doing transit, and it actually is feasible. So I think the housing element needs to talk about, it's called TODs, transit-oriented development. So I think they really should focus a little bit on that as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julio. Devin, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I'd like to respond a little bit to Janet and Julio's comments with regards to impact fees. With regards to impact fees, we have to be careful of basically if the impact fees are too high and if they go too far out of proportion to our neighbors in Gilroy and Salinas, then it will kill production and it will effectively act as a moratorium. And one of the things that needs to be evaluated in regards to this housing element, of course, is that basically the California Department of Housing and also the Attorney General are becoming a lot more active with regards to communities that are regarded as being intransigent to the fulfillment of their regional housing needs. So what I can tell you presently is that, the average construction costs for a home in Hollister is currently at around $400,000. Our current impact fees are at $490,000, and the average developer or REIT, that's Real Estate Investment Trust, the average financiers are not interested in any product that does not have a minimum 10% return on investment. So that is to say that with the current impact fees, basically there's no attraction, there is no incentive for any house that is less than $550,000 coming onto the market. And so as we look at our overall impact fees, I agree that impact fees are important to collect. I understand their importance as a revenue stream, but we need to be looking at whether our impact fees are rising to a point where they are becoming a deterrent to housing production and whether they are basically serving as an anti-growth measure rather than a measure that's, basically my point is that impact fees can kill the golden goose. That's to say we're hoping to see income and revenue sales tax from new businesses, from new population. But if the impact fees are too high, then it kills housing production and it kills development and business development altogether. And then we're just left with an ever decreasing revenue cycle. So that's sort of the counterpoint that I would like to state with regards to impact fees, is that we need to be looking to make sure that our impact fees are not disproportionate to our neighbors.
Thanks, Devin. One note that I'll make here, thank you everybody for your feedback regarding the impact fees. One part of the housing element update is a constraints analysis, which considers existing zoning, general plan land use, existing policies as well as other factors, including impact fees. So this is something that will be considered during the development of the housing element update. So just wanted to make a note there that there is a part of the housing element update document that considers those concerns. I see we have a few other comments in the chat box. So I see here from Judy that there is definitely a need for affordable housing and a need for down payment assistance. Assisting and allowing the entry-level buyer to purchase allows the next tiers to move into the next level as well. We saw that the state of California roll out the Dream for All down payment assistance program of $30 million, and the program was depleted in 11 days. And she notes that the program helped 2,000 families get into homes. Julio, I see, oh, I think your hand went down, but the comment here was that the down payment assistance doesn't contribute to low income or affordable housing stock. It's a subsidy for developers. And we need developers to contribute to the affordable housing stock. And the last comment we see here is a point system, 5 points for San Benito County resident, 3 points. So it's outlining a point system that relates to building permits, grants for down payments, remodels, and ADUs. Perhaps a point system would give San Benito County residents first opportunity. So that was just a note from Cynthia. So thank you for your feedback, everybody. If anybody wants to go off mute and share any final comments, and as noted before, all of this feedback will help to guide development of the housing element update and be considered in the various different chapters and appendices that go into developing the housing element update. If there's anything that we covered at this meeting that you'd like to further ask questions on or need further elaboration on, the best way to get that information is by contacting the housing element email address listed there, signing up for the housing element update emails, and then also sharing your feedback in the virtual community survey that is linked on your screen with the barcode. So anybody have final comments? All right, with that, once again, thank you so much to everybody that joined. We will be sharing the recording of this meeting on the Housing Element Update website as well for you to share with anybody that may not have been able to join and may be interested. And we look forward to communicating and engaging with everybody further as we move through this process. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, everyone.